Hello there. Hello. Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Verse 15, to till and to tend the garden, not to possess it. We are there to tend and to till it and to guard it and to keep it. We're not supposed to be exploiting it, and we are to pass it on as a sacred trust. And so I think you can get where we got the title for the series from that introduction. Even though we're giving authority to have dominion over this garden, this metaphorical garden, we don't own it. Just like we don't own the air or the water. We don't own anything. And so we need to care for it. The Torah also teaches us that we are partners with God in creation, and we are partners in sustaining our world. So it's our duty and our moral obligation to engage in sustainable businesses and personal practices. But because of our past practices, we must now all engage in tikkun olam, repairing the world. And we can start by tending our own garden sustainably and renewing that sacred trust. So I'm gonna give you a short, hopefully short introduction to native plants. And like Bonnie said, if you have questions, please write them in the chats and we'll try and get to them. Okay, so this is in paging down.
Not moving.
No. Sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty here. Why isn't this paging down? Okay, so let's start with what are native plants. That's always a good place to start with the definition. So native plants are plants that occurred in the region in which they evolved. And if you can see in this circle here, we're in the Hudson, sort of in the Hudson Highlands and Westchester, most of Westchester County is in that area. And some of Westchester is also in the Piedmont. And I'm not doing this as a geography lesson. What I'm doing this for mostly is to show you that, plants that are native to the coastal plains, way down in the corner there, are probably going to be somewhat different than plants that are in the mountains. And to keep that in mind when you're looking at native plants, that they're not necessarily going to be the same thing. And just because something's labeled as native doesn't mean it's native to your region. Okay, native plant, now it's working, yay. Native plants are also plants defined as plants that are dispersed throughout their region with no human involvement, or that occurred here prior to European settlement. So for us in America, this is pretty easy, or much easier than say if you're in Europe, because we have a real clear delineation of what's native and what isn't because of what was brought over from Europe. So some native plants that are pretty familiar are what we refer to as Indian corn and a lot of milkweeds. There's a lot of benefits to gardeners to garden with native plants. First of all, you have lower maintenance. You don't have to rake your leaves if you're gardening with native plants, and that's because leaves are a good soil builder. They suppress weeds, and they're a natural fertilizer. So that's a lot less work for you. The vast majority of butterflies and moths, they overwinter in the leaves. Okay, and they might be there as an egg or as a caterpillar or chrysalis or even the adult, and they're in the leaf litter. And if you clean that all up, you've thrown out the next season's worth of butterflies and caterpillars. Native plants are good for us as gardeners, because they're more resistant to insects and diseases. And so they usually don't require pesticides, which a lot of us would like to get away from anyway. And they're less likely to become invasive. So that's less work too, because you're not always pulling things out. They need less water since they're very tolerant to the conditions. They know how to go into a drought mode or to adapt if there's a big rain. And they usually, after they're established, will require no fertilizer. So that saves you a lot of money. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see the Carnar blue butterfly. And this is an example of a butterfly that's completely dependent on a lupine in order to complete its life cycle. All butterflies will lay an egg. That egg will hatch into a caterpillar, and the caterpillar needs to have a specific kind of leaf. In this kind, it's got to be the lupine leaf in order to eat. And that's called a larval host plant. If that leaf isn't there, the caterpillar dies. So that's, again, things to think about when you're trying to garden. So obviously, native plants will have a big benefit for wildlife, which I think a lot of us are concerned about. They can help reduce erosion. Again, they require few pesticides or fertilizers, so there's no added pollution, so there's cleaner rivers. They contribute to the overall health of natural communities, and they can help prevent the spread of alien or invasive species that might be present in a region and maybe help avert future introductions. They do always usually provide an essential source of food and shelter for wildlife. Usually, a plant has to be eaten, as Doug Ptolemy, one of my heroes, says, if it's being useful. Here's another example of that host relationship. Monarch butterflies, which we'll be talking about more next week, they rely on milkweeds for their caterpillars to grow into butterflies and go into chrysalis. So if there's no milkweed for the caterpillar starves to death. And that's the end of that life cycle. Local wildlife is critically dependent on native plant communities. This is a zebra swallowtail butterfly, and it feeds almost exclusively on the pawpaw tree during its larval stage. So that's all great information. But what's the problem then, right? Well, the problem is native plants have lost their habitat, resulting in a loss of diversity and loss of numbers. Nature's is a series of specialized relationships, as you can see from the 3 examples I showed in the other slides. Only 5% of the lower 48 states is close to pristine anymore, and that's due to logging, development, pavement, all the things that make our civilized world civilized. Example is over the last 50 years, it's estimated that 3 billion birds have been lost. That's 1 in 4 birds since 1970. We have several bee species for the first time ever on the endangered, threatened, or threatened list. The insect apocalypse is here, and without insects, our food supply is threatened. As Doug Ptolemy says again, insects are not optional. It's not okay if they disappear. Insects are the primary drivers in our ecosystems. If they go, we go. And the result of all this habitat loss and, nothing being pristine anymore is it results in a tiny disconnected remnant of the natural world left. And that's not enough to sustain them. But by landscaping with native plants in your yards, in your homes, in your neighbors, your schools, your synagogues, your communities, we can create urban suburban habitats. And we can hopefully restore some of this and connect areas so that wildlife can thrive and help ourselves at the same time. It's estimated right now that over 85% of the land east of the Mississippi is privately owned. Parks and recreational areas are not enough to conserve the ecosystem. And caterpillars are the key to the food webs. Most people don't realize that adult birds cannot feed their babies seeds. All right, we like to put out seeds and fruits for them. Baby birds can only eat something soft-bodied like a caterpillar, and caterpillars are very, very nutritious. So if you don't have the caterpillars, the baby birds just die. They starve to death again. In fact, there have been necropsies, which is an animal autopsy, where they've found dead baby birds and they open up the stomachs, and the stomachs are full of seeds. They can't digest them. They need caterpillars. They need worms. They need all these things. And so we need to start creating our urban suburban habitats and help the situation. So it's time to start thinking outside the boxwood. What can we plant? I will send you a list of what is good for this area upon request. I'll give you my email. And, you know, there are a lot of things you can plant, and we need to start thinking in terms of reducing our lawns, because lawns are fertilizer and water intensive. You need a lot of those to maintain a lawn. You really don't need a big lawn. It's just something that we've been told our lives. We need to start thinking differently about the whole environment. So we're going to think about what can we plant. Okay, so everybody I know pretty much has some kind of boxwood, all right? Boxwoods are from Europe. There's no such thing as an American boxwood, even if Home Depot tells you there isn't. So instead of these boxwoods, which you're probably going to need to replace soon anyway because there's a boxwood blight that's killing them all, think about an inkberry, okay? They have similar growing conditions. They provide food and cover for the birds. You do need both sexes. The inkberry, Ilex glabra, has a male and a female plant. And in order to get the berries, you need to get a male and a female. So that's one thing you could think as a shrub replacement. Like I said, a lot of people are losing their boxwoods, and good replacement plant. I can't really see from a distance much difference. Easy to grow. A lot of people like to use vines as ground cover, and instead of English ivy at the top, think about Virginia creeper. Now I can just see Maggie's face right there. She's going, no, Virginia creeper. No, yeah, I get it. Virginia creeper is kind of difficult to manage sometimes. It can be very aggressive in a garden setting. It is really easy to grow, and it's great for wildlife. But and a few of my friends said that they do get a rash when they touch it. So I get it. I happen to like the plant. I think it's got a lot of wildlife value, but I get it. You don't really like that. So if this one isn't for you, whoops, not the end. Uh-oh, hold it. Going back up, I'll find it. How about a wild strawberry? Okay. This is easy to grow, and it can grow in full sun to part shade, so it should be good in your yard. It's a ground-hugging herbaceous plant. It only goes 4 to 7 inches. It does shoot out little stolons or runners that we call them, and so it keeps growing and growing and growing, so it's not going to be hard to to keep it up. This plant's attracted to bees and butterflies and birds. The birds do like the strawberries. I don't think they're particularly tasty for humans, but I'm not sure of that. And many types of wildlife depend on the wild strawberry as a food source. But if that doesn't work in your yard, how about a partridge berry? It's also a very pretty little plant that can be a good ground cover. It needs to be an organically rich medium, well-drained soils, part shade to full shade. So if you have a shady area, this might be a good ground cover for you. It can be a little hard to establish, especially from seed, but once it's established, it's really carefree. And the fruit that you can see in the corner, they're the little red fruits. Those are eaten by birds and small mammals. Maybe you need something for a trellis. Okay, and it's so instead of the Japanese honeysuckle, which by the way is now illegal to sell in New York because it's invasive, try coral honeysuckle on the bottom. Coral honeysuckle is another one of my favorite plants, really easy to grow, attracts hummingbirds. Hummingbirds love this. Hummingbirds tend to go for red flowers, and this definitely has prolific red flowers. It attracts butterflies and bees. It's also a larval host or a caterpillar host for some moth species and butterfly species. And the berries are eaten by some birds will like that. Okay, so that's a trellis. Everybody likes that. Everybody wants a tree in their yard, right? I like trees, and trees, as you know, absorb a lot of carbon, and they really sequester the carbon really well, so we like them. But instead of a Norway maple, which is also invasive and shades out native ground cover, maybe choose a red maple, which is native, has great fall color, has a very high wildlife value. The seeds, the buds, the flowers, those are all eaten by birds and mammals. It's a larval host plant, again, for butterflies and moths, and it's a beautiful tree. I mean, and I don't know, I can't really tell the difference, so I don't know why you would pick something invasive and not native when you could have a beautiful tree like that. So another tree that's a problem is the Bradford pear. It's beautiful. And when I lived in Norfolk, we had like streets lined with Bradford pears, and they were gorgeous when they bloomed, just like whole boulevards full of them. The problem is that they are invasive and they're very prone to trunk splitting, as you can see on the bottom picture there on the left. So that's a problem that for you, because then you're gonna have to replace the tree. So instead of that, how about picking a black Howell viburnum? Beautiful tree, high wildlife value again. The fruit's eaten by birds and mammals. It's a larval host plant for butterflies and moths. That's really pretty. But maybe it doesn't work in your yard for whatever reason. You could try a flowering dogwood, which I think is the state tree of Virginia, where I came from. Also has a high wildlife value. It has a high fat fruit, which is eaten by migrating birds. And it's a larval host plant, again, for some butterflies. So that's really important. We want to get those caterpillars out there for everybody. So one of the things I often hear is native plants are really messy, and I don't want my yard to look like this. Okay, truth, full disclosure, my yard in Norfolk did look kind of like that. I understand that, I get it. And you know, we were a community association. They weren't particularly thrilled with my choice of planting either. And you might belong to a community association and they're not happy. You know, they want everything neat and tidy and whatever. So let's see what we can do here, all right? So I'm gonna pick this house and this garden. This is my inspiration garden, all right? It's pretty benign. I don't think anybody would have major objections to this landscaping. I think it's kind of boring, but that's me. Again, it's personal taste whenever you garden or do anything. And I want to have some caveats here when I do this part. I'm not a landscape architect. I'm just me, and I like plants and I have some master gardener training. And before you start any landscaping activity, you know, especially if it's kind of big, have your soil tested by your local extension service or wherever you can. That's really important before you start pouring in fertilizers and everything into an environment and whatever you need to find out what does that soil really need. They'll come back with a report. So on this inspiration garden, I'm going to make a couple of assumptions and planning for this. I'm assuming that we got part sun to part shade, that we've got a medium soil moisture, and we've got average soil. So I'm going to pick out plants that works in this environment here. And as I look to those native substitutions, I look for plants that would fit within those assumptions, because I think that would be like sort of probably the most common thing you would find in a yard. Okay, so we're going to look down now. This is my house. And instead of looking forward, we're looking down. You can see the roof of the house, and you can see the roof of the garage, the driveway, and the sort of the yard with some hardscape already put in. Okay, so I went ahead on this one and I'm gonna put in some mulch and some more hardscape and so a little bit of lawn. That's not the way you would do it if you were actually, you know, working the garden, but it was just easier in terms of the doing this slide here. Again, as I said, try to keep your lawn very small. Grass is water and fertilizer intensive. It supports little wildlife. Try to make the rest of the areas more natural and something that would be environmentally friendly. So the first plant I'm going to put in, I'm going to go back to that inkberry, that Ilex glabra. Everybody needs a shrub in the front, and especially we're going to try and model the inspiration house as much as we can. Again, this provides a very high wildlife value. If you get both sexes and you get the fruit, the birds can eat the fruit and then provide a nice cover for the birds, some shelter for them, which is important. This plant is evergreen. So unless we get like bitter cold here in New York, which I haven't really experienced yet, you should have an evergreen tree, some green in your yard through the whole year. Bit of a warning, there is a cultivar of this that I wouldn't get it no matter what, because the cultivar is only the female plant somehow. That's how it worked out. And so females are not going to produce the berries that you want. Okay, so we put in our first few shrubs in the yard along with the mulch we already had, and that's what it would look like. Okay, and so the inspiration house to me garden, it looked like it only had one type of shrub, but you know, it's my yard, so I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to put in another row, another kind of plant. And I picked this one because it was a little shorter, so you would get some height. This one, the flowers are also a little bit more conspicuous on this black chokeberry, and it will provide fruit. It has a moderate wildlife value, which I didn't understand why this was only rated moderate and the other one was high, but that's what the book said, so that's what I'm reporting. It is a larval host plant for some butterflies, and you will get fall color out of this. And so that's kind of nice. There's also a red chokeberry that you could consider, and you would have red berries instead of the black ones. But I chose this mostly because there was a height differential in the two shrubs. So there we go. This is our springtime view with the flowers blooming. I always love flowers. Now, when I was looking at that inspiration garden, I saw something that was a liripe looking kind of plant, kind of a grassy looking thing that was hanging over in front of the plants. So liripe is one of the plants I hate a lot. It just is so overused everywhere, sort of like boxwoods. And so I thought, what could we do that would give that grassy kind of look, kind of falling over? And I found the Pennsylvania sedge. This is a great grass alternative, everyone. And in fact, a lot of the sedges are. There are a lot of different species. I'm sure we could find something that would work in your yard. You can even mow this sedge like grass a couple times a year. It's a host to 36 species of caterpillars, and the birds eat the seeds. So this is really, really cool. I like these. And I actually grew this one in Norfolk and full sun, and it did pretty well. And I think it would probably even be happier in not so full sun, like more of a part sun. Let's see. Yeah, so I said there were many species already. And there are some species that will grow very well, like under like oak trees. It's actually called an oak sedge. So if you have trouble growing something in an area because it's very shaded, sedges are something you might want to look for. Now, if you look in the left, in the picture in the left bottom hand corner, you're going to see a Heuchera americana. I didn't use this in my garden yet. I did grow it in Norfolk, It's a beautiful little plant. This is a great ground cover too. And it's something that I would have put in, but I'm trying to keep the plant list small here. So, but I would add this definitely, it's even in the garden that I had if I was gonna make a bigger one. But I just thought these two work real well together. Okay, so now we have 3 plants in and we're moving along. So the next thing we need is a tree, right? The trees are really great. They do sequester carbon quite a bit. I'm gonna select that red maple again. I love the fall colors. This red maple has a high wildlife value, as I said, seeds, buds, flowers, all eaten by birds and mammals. It's a larval host plant for butterflies and moths. And then I'm gonna go off a little bit from the inspiration house, and I'm gonna put in a lot of columbines. The Eastern columbine is one of my favorite plants. I just think it's gorgeous. These flowers in the spring, it just so hangs there like, you know, just a little lantern, and the yellow and the red combination is incredible to me. This is 1 to 3 foot, so you could use it as ground cover again if you wanted to. It's short-lived, but it self-sows readily. In fact, you can't believe how many columbines you'll have in a few years if you plant a few, and it's great. It attracts hummingbirds and butterflies. It's a larval host. It has showy flowers. It blooms April through May, but in Norfolk, mine was started blooming in late February, because it was warmer there. And I'm gonna put in more of these than the inspiration garden because I just like to fill with plants rather than mulch. If you wanna keep your weeds down, plant more. And the more you plant, the fewer weeds you have, because that space is gonna be taken up by something you want, not something you don't want. Mulch will keep the weeds down, but it's not the best way to do it. So we're almost done with our inspiration house. And when I was looking at the picture in these little semicircles, I saw something that was kind of conical shaped, some kind of shrub or bush in the semicircle, and it looked like a little cone. And I'm not sure what they were using, but I decided to go with Juniperus communis, Compressa. Now this is a cultivar of the common juniper. I'm not real big, I like to go straight species. And the reason I like straight species is because I know that that's what really belongs here. I'm not sure about the cultivars, whether they're something that was derived from somebody's nursery or something we found naturally, if it was found naturally, whatever. But, maybe it was found naturally, but maybe in Arizona, not here. So I'm gonna use this one because it fits the design, first of all. It's only gonna grow to 6 feet and it's gonna keep that conical shape. It may require full sun, but I think that you could I've seen some of the sites I was looking at said that it could go part sun. It does have separate sexes, and so you need a male and a female. If you go to the nursery, make sure you ask for that. The berries or the cones are gonna be eaten by birds. Now, the way you can tell this is a cultivar is you see the Juniperus is the genus, the communis is the species, and in quotes, it's Compressa. That means it's a cultivar. That means that it's something that was produced by cultivation. It was selected for certain characteristics. In this case, it's probably the conical shape, okay? Sometimes, cultivars are okay. In this case, I think this one's been around for a long time. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they don't give you the value you need. Anyway, if this was really my yard, I wouldn't put this in. I would do more flowers, more native flowers, like some milkweeds and some other things that would, be better for the butterflies and the caterpillars. But you know, I'm trying to keep this in line with the inspiration garden. And voila, we're done. Okay, we have a very similar look to that inspiration garden using almost all straight species, only one cultivar. And all the plants should be able to grow well together because I selected them for the same kind of sun, the same kind of soil, the same kind of soil moisture. So they should do fine together. You may not always have that case, but for the most part, you should be fine. And this yard has really good wildlife value now. You're really contributing to the environment and helping to restore the garden, as it were. So what not to plant? Okay, so this is a biggie. Don't plant invasive plants. Check a list. I'll send you a list if you wanted to. I was really excited when I moved to New York. It's illegal to sell what's on that list in New York. There's like 126 plants and animals that are considered invasive, and it's illegal to sell them here. If you have them in your yard, please consider replacing them with natives. Don't plant exotic or non-natives. They really don't have any wildlife value. And don't plant hybrids. A hybrid is a cross between one plant and another, one genus and another. So think about like a horse and a donkey makes a mule, right? They're in the same genus, but they're not the same species. So you make a mule and the mule's sterile. It can't do any, you know, that's the end of the line for the mule. When you do hybrids, we're breeding out a lot of the native value, like we might change the color, the bee doesn't recognize it anymore. We might have so many flowers around it or so many petals, they can't get in to get the nectar. There's a whole bunch of things that can go wrong. A lot of hybrids are sterile and they produce little pollen or nectar. So think about that. Stick with natives if you can. And I'm going to give you an example, an extreme example of an invasive plant. This is kudzu on the left. Invasive plants are species that can thrive and spread aggressively outside their native range. Now, kudzu came from Asia, and it's also defined that it causes harm to the natural resources and economic activity or humans. So this is a common sight in the south, kudzu. It's overtaken native plants and eventually it overtakes entire landscapes. We've dubbed it in the south as the vine that ate the south. Kudzu can grow about a foot a day. There's no killing this. It's going to be it is a real problem. And this is one of those examples of where we thought we were doing something good, and we didn't check things out, and we didn't research it well enough. This was brought in I think, the 1930s for erosion control. So it's not controlling erosion, it's eroding, and it's caused a lot of economic harm. You know, and that's one of the reasons why, for me, I really want to go with what's native to my area and not go outside that, because I know that's supposed to be here. I can bring something in that I think is going to do no harm or might be helpful, and I could be very wrong and do some very big damage. So stick with natives, and you know, I think you'll be happy, and you'll be able to you'll be able to garden with joy and restore our environment. So in conclusion, just want to say that native plants can benefit your yard and the environment. Your new landscaping plans can include natives with simple substitutions or some simple thoughtful substitutions for the alien species. And invasive plants are really harmful to the environment. They can cause great economic harm as well. Try to remove them. It's often difficult, and replace them with natives. So thank you very much for listening. And These are my references. If you read one book on plants and the environment, I would recommend Bringing Nature Home by Doug Tolomei. If you ever get to hear him speak, you really need to hear him speak. He's wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marianne. That was wonderful.
Yep.
We have a number of questions for you in the chat. I'll read them for you.
Okay.
The first one, wait, let me open it up here. First of all, Emily says, this is so much info, amazing. So thank you again.
Yeah, and I'm happy to send my PowerPoint presentation to anybody who wants it. I'll give you my email. Okay, so you have the information.
Thank you. Pam wants to know, will a nursery know if a plant is male or female?
They should. If they're selling the plant, they should. And if they don't, then I would, sometimes they have to wait until the berries are produced. Like you might have to wait till the fall to buy the plant. And fall's a great time to plant anyway. So they should know that. And you could, if you're ordering it online like I often do, then you could, just request that you get a male and a female.
Thank you.
Okay.
Judy asked, are the plants you mentioned deer resistant?
A lot of them are, yeah. And I can definitely go through my list and give you the ones that are deer resistant. I don't think the Virginia creeper is. I think deer really like Virginia creeper.
Okay.
Which is a way of controlling the Virginia creeper. See, that's one of the things we're so out of balance, right? We don't have a lot of, we're pushing the deer off into their little corner. The Virginia creeper is growing. There's nothing to eat the Virginia creeper. Same thing with poison ivy. Deer like to eat poison ivy.
That was the last of the questions in the chat.
Okay.
If anybody has any other questions, I think it's a small enough group that people can just unmute themselves and ask if they'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Any takers? No?
So one of the places where locally you could look for native plants, I just wanted to mention, is Rosedale Nursery in Hawthorne. But again, check the genus and the species and against a list or some kind of a reference to make sure that it's not from someplace else. And I order a lot of my plants online through a website called Isel Plants. And if anybody wants to come out and help us garden, Maggie's doing vegetables. She's a great vegetable gardener. And I'm learning from her on vegetables. And I'm doing the native plants, and I've got some more native plants I'm going to be putting in soon. But we could use some help out there if anybody's interested.
This is at Kol Ami. These gardens are at Kol Ami.
Right, at Kol Ami. Not at my house. I don't even have a house anymore. I have
Question, does anybody know where you can get your soil tested in Westchester? Has anybody done this, and where I could go to find my soil tested?
You can get a soil test kit from your, I think it's the extension services. I think it's through Cornell. And they'll send you can either just get a kit and then you send it in with, I think it's usually $10 or something. And then tell them this is for a vegetable garden, or this is for my front yard with flowers, whatever. And so that they'll recommend exactly how much fertilizer or calcium or whatever you need put in there, rather than overloading and it all spills off into the rivers.
You said Cornell, is that it?
Yeah, let me get the exact extension service for you here, because like I said, I only moved here a year ago, and it was the extension service with the Virginia Tech extension service in Virginia, but here I think it's Cornell because I looked at them.
Thank you.
I think Maggie was going to say something. Maggie, unmute yourself.
It is the Cornell Extension Services, and you can just look it up online. I'm not sure, but there may be a county one as well.
There may be. Yeah.
Right, and they used to, the Westchester Community College used to have extension classes on gardening with native plants.
Yeah, they used to have a plant sale, I think, too.
Right, but right here up in Valhalla they have it, or they used to have it. anyway, who knows what's going to happen now? But they had a lot of information. And they were like, Saturday morning classes for 3 hours. They weren't gigantic, but there might have been 3 or 4 of them to take in a row.
Yeah, the Westchester Community College has a whole native plant center. I was like thrilled when I moved here to find that out. I haven't been over there yet because I was ready to go over there and then COVID hit. But yeah, so they have a lot, but I would definitely, before you do any kind of landscaping, and another question I often get is like, should I tear up my whole yard and just put natives in? And I would never do that. I would like take a small area, after you've had your soil tested, see what's working, make sure you know what your sun is, make sure you know what your moisture is and all that good stuff, and run a few test plants, because it's, you don't want, I've had friends that they tore up their whole yards, put in all native plants and everything died. So, they were a little soured on the whole concept, but I did mine slowly and in pieces, and I had good luck.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions? Okay, so next week I'm going to be talking about creating a monarch way station. Very happy to announce that Kol Ami is a certified monarch way station. We're waiting our sign. Yay, yes. And we're also waiting for monarch butterflies to arrive. Yeah, Jerry thinks he saw one today. There have been a couple of sightings in New York, and now Jerry saw one. So hopefully, what Maggie's put in a few of her own milkweeds, and our milkweeds are growing pretty well. If you guys ever want to help me in the garden, email me, or help Maggie, email her. And we could use some help, or if you just want to see what we did in terms of the vegetables that we're growing for the food pantry, what did you harvest already, Maggie? 20 heads?
20 heads of lettuce.
20 heads of lettuce that went to our food pantry. I'll talk to you about the monarchs there and show you what we're doing and what our plans are. We are going to register soon as a pollinator garden too. I have that ready to go. So we're making steps to green our faith on the outside. Bonnie did a lot to do greening the faith on the inside of the building. Now we're on the outside. And hopefully you can take some of these lessons home and put them into practice in your yard too. So great.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hello, Emily.
Hi, Emily. I'm Marianne. Hope to see you soon.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm the assistant director at Kol Ami, but I am also notoriously Maggie Weber's daughter. More.
Some of us know that.
So it's very exciting. I did not necessarily inherit the green thumb that my mother has. I do love a garden, and I do appreciate a lot of it, but it's exciting to learn new stuff.
It is. It is. Great. All right. Well, again, if you want the list, email me. If you have questions, feel
Tell
free to
everybody what your email address is. Or
M,
type it into the chat. Could you type it into
Okay.
the chat so people could see it?
where's the chat? I've got to find the chat
Just at the
first.
bottom.
Very exciting.
And this way everyone could just copy and paste it from your chat right into your address book.
That's really a good idea.
And while Marianne is looking where to type into the chat, I just want to remind everybody to come next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. And for the following Tuesdays after that, it's a series of 4. And like I said earlier, Marianne will be going over creating a monarch butterfly way station, helping native bees and other pollinators, and certifying Kol Ami as a wildlife habitat. So that's the next.
Wait, do it again. Let me see. Is it on here?
It's on there. MLN.
Thank you.
Do you see it?
Right.
Everybody-
mln@mlnadler.net. I thought it was easy when I set it up, but apparently it's very confusing. That's an L, not an uppercase I.
So if you can highlight it with your cursor, copy it, and paste it right into your email or your address book, that's the best way to not make a typo.
And yes, Pam, I make house calls.
I I may reach out to you because I need to. I remember seeing a few years ago on social media the list of plants that naturally keep away mosquitoes, and that's what I need for my garden or around my patio. We had a cedar spray. At one point, our gardener was spraying with some kind of natural cedar oil, but we don't do that anymore. But a lot of people have said, I don't know if it's lavender, eucalyptus, like there's some things you can plant around your yard that will help. So
Lemon
you
balm.
have standing water.
Yeah.
So,
Rats, I think, are two of them.
so speaking of mosquitoes, because it's getting to be that season, there are a couple things that you can do. First of all, make sure you have no standing water, even like a teaspoonful of water.
We do, because we have French drains built in. So unfortunately in our yard, it's unavoidable to have standing water, which is why I look to other solutions.
So the next thing you can do then is to get this product called mosquito dunks. Have you heard of them?
Yes, the dunks. I do put the dunks in. Mhm.
Okay, so that will help you a lot. And do things to attract dragonflies to your yard. Dragonflies eat mosquitoes.
Okay.
And this is the one that everybody's gonna go, put up a bat box.
That's
Oh, I've heard about the bats.
Yeah, a brown bat will eat 1,000 mosquitoes an hour.
I'm not sure I can convince my husband or my 2 dogs for the bat box, but I have heard
It's
really cool
high-
things about the
High
bat
up
box.
away, they won't even know it's there. That's the best way to, really control organically. And don't eat the bats, okay? Please, don't eat bats. But they eat mosquitoes and other small annoying insects a lot. So, those are 3, but the mosquito dunks really work well too.
Mhm. But I'll look into the dragonflies. That's cool. My daughter would probably think that's cool too.
Yeah, dragonflies are eat mosquitoes as well, which I didn't know, but they
Awesome.
do.
Thank you.
So there you go. Lots of natural ways we can, be comfortable too. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate you listening to me. And as I said, if you have any questions, email me. I'll try to get to them, and I will make house calls if you want.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
Marianne.
Okay,
I'll see you
everyone.
at the
Good
garden.
night.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
so
See you
much,
tomorrow,
everybody.
maybe, Maggie. Bye-bye.
Bye.